Retired SEAL trusted nobody and guarded his dog, until the nurse spoke one word. The old cabin stood alone beneath the bright afternoon sky, surrounded by endless pine trees and silence. Most people who passed through the valley knew better than to stop there. The man who lived inside had a reputation. He wasn't dangerous, but he was distant. Cold. Untouchable. And the only living soul he seemed to care about was the German shepherd that never left his side. What nobody knew was that behind those weathered cabin walls lived a man carrying wounds far deeper than anyone could see. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of human connection, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Light of Kindness. Your support helps spread stories that remind us all that compassion still exists in the world. For nearly 12 years, Corbin Hale lived alone in the mountains. A retired Navy SEAL, he had survived combat missions most people could never imagine. He had seen war up close. He had lost teammates who were more like brothers. He had returned home carrying invisible scars that followed him every waking moment. Trust had become a luxury he could no longer afford. The world had disappointed him too many times. Friends drifted away. Family relationships grew distant. The noise of cities became unbearable. Eventually, he sold almost everything and disappeared into the wilderness. Only one companion remained. A loyal German shepherd named Ranger. Ranger wasn't just a dog. He was Corbin's reason to get out of bed each morning. The dog had been trained alongside military handlers and possessed an uncanny ability to sense danger and emotion. Ranger seemed to understand the nightmares before they came. Whenever Corbin woke trembling in the darkness, Ranger would already be there, resting his head against his owner's chest. Together, they built a life of quiet routines. Every morning began with long walks beneath the sunlight filtering through towering pine trees. Afternoons were spent repairing fences, gathering firewood, or fishing in nearby streams. Evenings ended on the cabin porch where man and dog watched the sun disappear behind the mountains. It wasn't happiness. But it was peace. Then one autumn afternoon, everything changed. Corbin had been splitting firewood when a sharp pain exploded through his chest. The axe slipped from his hands. His knees buckled. The world tilted sideways. Ranger barked frantically as Corbin collapsed onto the porch. For several terrifying minutes, he struggled to breathe. Every heartbeat felt like a hammer striking his ribs. By the time emergency responders arrived, his vision had blurred and darkness threatened to swallow him. As they loaded him into the ambulance, Ranger refused to leave. The dog paced, barked, and fought desperately to stay close. Corbin's greatest fear wasn't dying. It was leaving Ranger behind. At the regional hospital, doctors confirmed he had suffered a serious cardiac event. Surgery would be necessary. Recovery could take months. Corbin listened in silence. The words barely registered. His thoughts remained fixed on one thing. Who was taking care of Ranger? The answer came from a young nurse named Mara Vance. Mara had worked in emergency care for years, but something about the retired soldier caught her attention. Perhaps it was the loneliness hidden behind his hardened expression. Perhaps it was the way his eyes immediately searched for news about his dog before asking about himself. Over the following days, Mara noticed how withdrawn he was. He refused visitors. Ignored conversations. Answered questions with one-word responses. Walls surrounded him so completely that nobody could reach him. Nobody except Ranger. Each afternoon, Mara quietly shared updates she received from a local animal caretaker who had agreed to watch the dog temporarily. She brought photographs. Short videos. Small pieces of reassurance. Yet Corbin remained guarded. Experience had taught him that kindness rarely lasted. One afternoon, while changing his bandages, Mara noticed an old military bracelet lying beside his bed. Engraved into the metal were the names of fallen teammates. Corbin stared out the window. His expression hardened. Years of grief filled the room like an invisible storm. Mara didn't ask questions. She didn't offer advice. She simply looked at the bracelet and spoke a single word. Brother. The effect was immediate. For the first time, Corbin looked directly at her. Not because the word was unusual, but because it was exactly right. Those names weren't soldiers. They weren't memories. They were brothers. People he had laughed with, fought beside, and buried. For years, nobody had understood that difference. Yet somehow, this stranger did. Something shifted that day. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But a crack appeared in the wall surrounding his heart. Over the next several weeks, Mara continued showing up. She never pushed. Never judged. Never treated him like a broken man. Instead, she treated him like someone worth listening to. Gradually, Corbin began sharing pieces of his story. The missions. The losses. The guilt he carried for surviving when others hadn't. The loneliness that followed him home. For the first time in years, he allowed another person to see the weight he carried. And something remarkable happened. The burden became lighter. Recovery remained difficult. Physical therapy tested his strength. Long nights tested his patience. Some days felt impossible. But each morning brought new determination. Partly because Ranger was waiting. Partly because someone finally believed he was more than his pain. Weeks later, doctors cleared him for discharge. The morning sunlight poured through hospital windows as Corbin gathered his belongings. Outside, a familiar figure waited near the entrance. The moment Ranger saw him, the dog exploded with joy. People stopped walking. Some wiped away tears. The German Shepherd sprinted across the parking area, nearly knocking Corbin off balance as he wrapped himself around his owner. Years of loyalty, love, and devotion poured into that reunion. Corbin dropped to one knee despite the discomfort. His hands trembled as he buried his face into Ranger's fur. For a long moment, neither moved. The world seemed to disappear. Only gratitude remained. Before leaving, Corbin turned toward the hospital entrance. Mara stood there watching quietly. The nurse who had changed nothing and everything at the same time. The nurse who had spoken one word. The nurse who reminded a wounded soldier that trust wasn't weakness. It was courage. Months later, the valley noticed changes. Corbin still lived in the cabin. Still walked with Ranger beneath the pines. But he no longer isolated himself completely. He volunteered at local veteran support groups. He helped train service dogs. He listened to others carrying burdens similar to his own. The man who once trusted nobody had discovered that healing often begins with the smallest acts of kindness. Sometimes a photograph. Sometimes a patient conversation. Sometimes a single word spoken at exactly the right moment. And if this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who believes kindness can change lives. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need hope today more than ever. Special request: comment the word "brother" below if you believe no one should have to carry their struggles alone. As the sun set over the mountains that evening, Corbin sat on his porch beside Ranger. The same cabin stood beneath the same trees. The same quiet surrounded them. Yet everything was different. Because sometimes the strongest people are not those who fight every battle alone. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who finally allow kindness to find them. And sometimes, all it takes to change a life is one person willing to stay, and one word spoken from the heart.